Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Wanda Riddick Johnson, who is a supply chain technology fellow at Deloitte. And we're going to talk a little bit about Deloitte and their supply chain focus today. And we're going to dive into a little bit more on the WMS side as well. What's kind of been happening in WMS, how to go about implementing and selection around WMS, and that is Wanda's specialty. So we're definitely happy to get her expertise and knowledge here on the podcast to talk to us about these warehouse management systems and also what Deloitte is up to on the supply chain side as well. So Wanda, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the show today and looking forward to have this great conversation.
Absolutely. Happy to get you on here and definitely happy to be connected with you too over the last month or so. I think we got connected and I was very interested actually to hear about Deloitte's involvement on the supply chain side of the world and industry because I think typically we don't always think of Deloitte and think supply chain right away, right? So why don't you kind of kick us off here? Tell us a little bit about uh, specifically Deloitte's focus on supply chain and what you all do in that arena.
Great. For one, as far as Deloitte, so let me just give you a little background. The reason why I
Sure.
came to Deloitte is because of their supply chain practice. So I used to
Mm,
work for another firm, and due to Deloitte's expansion and their depth of knowledge and innovation in supply chain space, that is one of the main reasons I came to Deloitte. But
mm,
Deloitte has a very deep supply chain offering. We have six different offers within our supply chain practice.
okay.
I'm only going to focus on the one that I actually fall under, but we have product engineering and development. We have sourcing and procurement. We have our smart factory. We have planning and fulfillment, and we have our digital supply chain. I fall under our planning and fulfillment. And the piece that I am under is fulfillment. And under
Mm,
our fulfillment practice, we really focus on how do we actually help our clients understand some of the challenges they face and how we actually help them smooth out those challenges through technology, operation assessments, and other things. One of our main focuses is the logistics and distribution. I
mm,
know people look at fulfillment, but fulfillment goes across several spectrums. But
right.
under our L&D, it's really the network design, transportation management, and warehouse management. And I left warehouse management to the last because that is my expertise. And
Hmm.
that's where we have a very large practice of practitioners, not only in the US, but in Mexico and in India, that we actually take that well rounded team and help our clients implement. First, we help them select a WMS and do operation assessments and walkthroughs. But additionally, from that, we help them do a vendor selection. And then we go through the process and we are a systems integrator. So we help you
Mm.
implement that warehouse management system and as well as transportation management and helping you understand where your distribution centers are and what is the best place to improve those service levels and reduce costs.
Mm. So a broad spectrum there, certainly covering on just the fulfillment side there that you talked about, and then obviously more on the supply chain practice as well. And obviously we're the New Warehouse podcast, so we care about the fulfillment side. So we got the right person here, I think, right?
Yes, you do.
So definitely, so very interested in diving into this with you here a little bit. And from the WMS side, I mean, it sounds like you do from pretty much the end-to-end process, right, to making that happen. But you yourself have been specifically involved in WMS for quite some time now in warehouse management systems. So I guess tell us a little bit about through your career because certainly I think especially in the last couple of years, I mean, there's been a ton of changes around what warehouse management systems look like and how they operate and what they can do. Tell us, for you specifically or personally, I mean, what have you seen throughout your career as some of like the biggest leaps or changes around just WMS in general?
Well, I started with WMS more than 20 years ago.
Mm,
I can use the word AS400, and now
sure.
people are talking about I series. So I'm dating myself way back when I did PKMS for Manhattan. So that's
Mm,
been a long time ago. But one of the major changes, if you look at the evolution of warehouse management systems, I started on prem.
mm,
You had your data center sitting in your warehouse. Now, as you see the changes, is cloud WMS, which is actually
right.
making it much easier for your upgrades, much easier for you to understand how to make some of those flexibility for the client, better business decisions, and how you can do adjustments. So that's one area that I have really seen a major change in. But the other big change is data analytics.
Mm,
If you think back in the day, we did all our manual reports, really didn't talk about business intelligence and all of that, but using all that data to actually make better decisions in your warehouse, not only with your workforce, but also how do you actually ship your orders and all that order management piece. I think the last one that I really want to focus on is machine learning.
mm,
Now I started with automation. I started with tilt trades. I started with shoe sorter, pick to light, put to light. We still have that around, but now as we
yeah.
move forward, we see the more of the automation and how do you actually use more of the machine learning and those algorithms to continue to how do you learn from your warehouse data to
Mm,
optimize those processes within your warehouse.
mm. Very interesting there, and obviously in 20 years, there's been not just on the WMS side, but just in the warehouse industry in general, there's been a ton of evolution and change from a technology perspective, and just what's even possible to do now versus 20 years ago there's a lot more you can do, and a lot of different interesting ways to go about that, and technologies that are out there. So it's very interesting to hear some of those changes now. So I guess tell us, now, and when you look at all of these different changes, right, that you mentioned in there, some of the technologies and things that you're looking at, and the capabilities that WMS has now. When you look at even just selection in general, I mean, how do you kind of guide or help a company navigate this, right? Because there's a lot to kind of digest. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot of capabilities to evaluate. How do you even start that selection process at this point with so many options out there?
Yes, it is a lot of options. Really, it depends. First thing, what we always look at is, what is your footprint? So if you're in retail consumer products, what is the best solution of WMS that's out there? But before you really
Mm,
start that journey of selecting your WMS, what we do, we want to come in and do an assessment. Because a
mm,
lot of times as we talked about over 20 years, some of the people that we work with, they are still using old WMS systems. And those
right.
WMSs are not as robust as the ones that we have today. And then a lot of them want to understand, how do I integrate automation? How can I actually, combat the issues of my workforce challenges? So what we like to do and what I have done is I go in first, write up a roadmap, understand what is your current systems that you have in place, current operations, current processes. Once you do all of that, then how do we map it out to say, what does your future look like? What is those new
Mm,
business requirements? We don't want to do like for like because as we just we talked about cloud WMS. So we want to
right.
make sure we select a WMS that will actually be sustainable for you. And not only that, is also, when we gather all those requirements, let's take those requirements and start matching it to what vendors. It may be 10 WMS. Well, we know it's a whole lot more than that,
Oh yeah.
but we want to make a short list.
Mm, yeah.
So let's get a short list, maybe less than five. And based on those five WMS vendors, how do we actually do a comparison between each one of those? That actually, which one will actually meet at minimum without any modifications, keyword
Mm,
modifications? How do you actually can actually implement that with at least 80 to 90% of their base functionality? That way, you lower your risk of when you're ready to do an upgrade. It's not really an upgrade; it is an upgrade. So
Mm,
those things that we really would like to do. And then the other thing is, it's the integration. So, what is your ERP? You may have SAP, you may have Oracle, or you may have another ERP. And how does that integration work? So, all those things together is our journey of how do we actually, and I'm doing this in less than a 5 minute chat with you, but
yeah.
it takes a little longer to do that. But
Uh-huh.
we want to make sure that when we go in, we talk to the right people. That means the people that's actually doing the work, because one thing that we really want to consider is change management. So when you go
Mm,
through that WMS selection, you have people that's been in that warehouse, that's been doing that same work in that same system for how many years? 10 years. And
right.
that's a adoption of change. So it's a lot of things that come along with that journey of your selection. But the main thing is, how do we select? How do we create a short list of the vendors that actually match your business requirements? And then how do we actually go through and do some demos with those vendors? So that way you can actually see the system, feel it. And also, not only that, how do we actually go and do some due diligence? Talk to other clients,
Mm,
other customers that's actually using that system, go to their warehouse, walk their distribution center, and understand that whole end to end process. And that way you can understand not only this is what we from Deloitte has, hey, this is our recommendation and this is
mm,
what we're suggesting, but also what we're doing for you is we're working side by side and talking to other clients that have this solution too.
mm. Yeah, I love that, and I love both of those aspects that you touched on there. One being, talk to the people that are using this on a daily basis, right? What are challenges they're having, what are the problems they're having, and how do we address those? But then also, going and seeing like, okay, well, this is what the after could look like at other operations or customers that have put in this same system or same setup before. And I think getting that, real world in a sense understanding of the problem, and then the real world understanding of what does the solution potentially look like, I think takes it to a whole another level, right, of understanding of what you're going to be doing, because I think it is a challenge, definitely. I mean, I talked to a smaller 3PL just yesterday actually, and they were saying they just they thought they were switching to WMS that would work for them, and they just got under a year contract, and they had to get rid of it at the end of the year, and they're like, we just wasted so much money because it wasn't the right fit for us, right? And I think there's some misalignment there and some misunderstanding of like what is the actual right fit and how do we go about to figure that out. I'm curious. I mean, you talked about cloud solutions, right? And I think most newer WMSs are certainly on the cloud. But do you see anybody still wanting to go with an on-prem solution, or is that pretty much just phasing out at this point?
No, we still I've run across clients sometime in your life science and your
Mm,
pharmaceutical space where that
sure.
they have a lot of you know sensitive information in their
Okay.
data and their R&D and all that, and they feel more comfortable staying on the on-prem. And then some just a client I just recently did about a couple years ago, they stayed on prem because of that reason.
Mm,
Um, and just to make sure there's no leakage in their data and data integrity. So, but you don't really have that issue with going on the cloud. But
mm,
what we always want to talk to a client about is what they're comfortable with. It's not what I may make a recommendation, but we want to make sure that they're happy. And to just your point, 3PL, 3PL, WMS, when you implement, you got so many different tenants in that building compared
mhm,
to one, retailer that's all they have is they're shipping their product to a customer or e-com. You have to take all those things into consideration. And going back to on-prem, a lot of people are comfortable with that. They know it's
mm,
stable, and people still have concerns about being on the cloud, but going in that direction with a WMS moving toward the future and to stay competitive in the marketplace with your upgrades is a solution that you should consider.
mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I guess that makes sense. People that are a little more sensitive about the data aspect and things of that nature. But yeah, but I mean, you certainly think if you go on prem, I mean, you certainly do lose some of those benefits, like you said, to be able to have consistent updates. And I remember my first role in my career. Working for a company, and that's how ultimately I got into the warehouse world. But yeah, we did an upgrade of our system, and we were on prem. It was Manhattan at the time, and uh, and yeah, it was like, I couldn't believe it. How long it took to do the upgrade, and then after by the time we were done the upgrade, it was like, oh well, and then they told me like, oh well, this is actually the version that came out like 3 years ago. Right. And I was like, as a younger person at the time, I was just like, what? This is insane. This is crazy. Like not fully understanding like how the industry worked at that time. I'm like, this is wild. Right. But I think that it's interesting to see that and that shift happening as well. So I'm curious, I mean, on that side, what do you see, in the last year, maybe last 2 years or so? I mean, what is some of the top reasons that companies are looking to switch their WMS or looking for a new option? What are some of those drivers that are really impacting that?
I think one of the drivers that they're looking to implement a WMS, a new one, or on cloud is if you look at all the changes that you see within the warehouse, you want to improve your processing time. You want to
Mm,
ensure that the system that you put in is going to be around for some period of time because implement a WMS, you're not going to do it every 2 years or 3 years.
yeah.
It's costly. So they're looking at if I integrate this to my ERP, if I integrate this to automation, one of the biggest challenges everybody's facing is workforce and
Mm,
having labor shortages. So when they start looking at that WMS, they're looking at, hey, how can I actually improve my picking efficiency, my unloading? And if I do all of that, if I have a robust WMS that has a good list of different systems requirements baked in, as I move along my journey and as I move along, increasing my footprint or increasing my throughput, I know this WMS is um, able to handle all of those different nuances that's coming along.
mm.
But I think the main reason is, hey, I know I want to stay ahead of the marketplace. I want to stay in the market with making sure I have the right product to my right customer. It's all about your end customer nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that customer experience has become so critical, right? Especially as we move to more omni-channel and more e-commerce specifically, right? That touch point with your customer is when they receive that box and open it, right? So being able to facilitate an experience, I think is super critical. I mean, did you see that the shift of that, certainly, I think we've talked about it plenty of times on this podcast and all around the world, right? The pandemic, and that shift to e-commerce and the explosion there. I mean, did you see that there was an uptick in people looking to adjust their WMS or around that time or coming out of the pandemic due to kind of this consumer behavior shift?
Yes, really, right after the pandemic, a lot of the surge of, can you come in and help me do assessment of where I am today and where I
Mm,
should be? The one major thing came out of is everybody had brick and mortar. A lot of people had the brick and mortar stores.
right,
And then the foot traffic in those stores, people still are going into the stores, but more people are going online. So how do I actually
right,
build my WMS that it could be, hey, I can ship to store out of that same location, but also I can actually satisfy e-com order out of that same warehouse. And that
right,
way I'm not actually building a new warehouse. A lot of people had, hey, they had a distribution center for shipping to their stores or shipping to a third party vendor. Like if you ship from Ralph Lauren to Dillard's or Belt, I'm from the South, so I'm using all those stores. And then you start looking at, okay, now I drive down 85 now, and
Mm,
it's a Bloomingdale's big e-fulfillment center, that's
mm,
sitting off of 85. But they're not only doing Bloomingdale's out of that facility, probably they're doing their Macy's and all these other brands. So how do
yeah.
they actually take and use a WMS that can actually do multi-brand on the channel 2.0, that I actually can say, okay, I'm gonna actually ship it to a store to pick it up for a customer, or I can ship it to you direct to your house, direct to the consumer, which has always been the case. But now, how do I actually use that WMS to be more, hey, how can I fit all my different type of customers that I need to satisfy? And not only satisfy those customers, but within that four walls of that warehouse, how can I actually make sure I am more efficient in picking
Mm,
this product that, as I said, you can go to this pick face and I can pick out product to ship to a customer, but also I can go to my case pick or my full pallet and do a full pallet of product to a third party customer or whomever it
mm,
may be.
mm.
There's so many different
Interesting. Yeah.
animals out, and I hate to say animals, but different variations
Yeah. Yeah.
that now, before I just think about when I years ago, before I got into consulting, I came from industry. So I used
Mm,
to work for TJ Maxx and then I worked for
okay.
Ralph Lauren. So, that's two different spectrums. You got the full
Yeah.
price and you have the all price. Totally different footprint, how you do your business requirements. But now when I was still at Ralph Lauren, I did outlet division and then we did wholesale division out of the same
Mm,
building. And now as you look at as they are growing, they have their e-fulfillment centers. They do a lot more. But that is where the journey from warehouse management systems and distribution, all L&D, that's the direction that so many people want to go in. How do I actually do, as you talked about, omnichannel?
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's been so interesting to see, just the different technologies and solutions that have kind of come out of that, right? As people are trying to navigate these more complex things, and as you said, do multiple different types of business or parts of their business out of one facility, right? Like, how do we make that happen, right? And how do we do that from, a systems perspective, from a physical perspective, all these different complex layers there to be able to do that. So I'm curious, I mean, from your perspective, because, I'm sure you look at tons of WMSs that are out there, and, you mentioned there's certainly a lot more than just 10 WMSs to choose from, right? So we've seen a lot of, WMSs kind of startup as well, in the past few years, coming out of the pandemic too. Part of the reason those complexities kind of spurring that. I mean, what is your view on some of the startup WMSs out there, and how do you, maybe as a someone that's going to be an end user, I mean, how do you navigate that, and how do you understand, like, because you want a software that's going to stick with you for quite some time, as you mentioned. You're not going to do a WMS implementation or change every 2 years, right? You don't want to, at least. But how do you kind of navigate some of these newer offerings in the market too, as well, and how do you kind of I guess advise people, how to look at them to see if they're going to reach that maturity level that makes sense for like a big investment.
Well, you're right. It's a lot of startups. It's a lot of small ones.
Yeah.
And one thing when people come and they talk about a WMS, they look at sometimes they want to look at low cost. Well, low
Mm,
cost can actually bite you down the road.
yeah.
So what you really, and some of the startups are great startups, and it may be best for your business, but also one key piece when you start looking at a startup, sometimes they're private, so you may not be able to get a lot of the financial information, but you do
Mm,
need to dig a little more. Think about if a startup just started on a year ago.
yeah.
Let's see where they are and what their growth was and what clients they actually implemented at WMS. Now you have a startup, and people still say startup after 3 years because still
Yeah.
they are very new. But
Yeah.
let's do, as I talked about before, you always need to do your due diligence.
Mm,
You need to go through and really check the financial stability. even if they're not on Wall Street, but still you should be able to talk to whatever customers they have. What does their support model look like? How many employees do they have? Because now if they have started up and they have three different customers, and now you're the fourth customer, and you have issues or challenge, you may want to do an upgrade, you may want to change, or you want to do that. Do they have enough employees to help do that bandwidth? How do they transfer that knowledge? Customer support, people don't think about that until sometime after the fact, but
Mhm.
you really need to understand that, and you need to understand, look at that package. What's in that package compared to your, back to I'm saying, you gather your business requirements, you did
Yeah.
that. But I always believe in this. Whenever you have do a selection, that's the software vendor saying, "Hey, I'm a fit." I always tell people, "Hey, you should get another set of eyes, like a systems integrator, to come in to help you understand how do you actually make sure you make the right decision."
Mm.
Sometimes you can go along just with talking to the WMS vendor, but as a startup, it's just understanding their base functionality. You don't really want to do a lot of modifications probably with a startup, but the key back to all of it is, how does it align to your business requirements? How does it align to what does your future growth look like? But the bottom line is, what is their financial sustainability,
Mhm.
stability? I'm sorry, financial stability, and additionally, do a due diligence. Go talk to their customers that they had implemented that system. And is it the same industry, that is a like for like? Everything is not always like for like, but is it
Mhm.
similar to your footprint that you actually ship to your customers?
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's great advice there because I think it is, sometimes it's a challenge, right? To think like, oh, well, uh, this company is new, but the solution sounds like, it's like the perfect fit for us, right? But can we, guarantee that they're still going to be here in 2 or 3 years, right? To support us, right? So I think that's a great thing to kind of look under the hood, I guess, in a sense, and
Hmm.
kick the tires a little bit and see, kind of like, well, one, are they financially stable, right? Can they even financially survive for another 2 or 3 years? And who's using them already? And let's talk to them. I think that goes back to your initial point earlier in the conversation about looking at internally, like, what are our needs, but then also externally, like, who's using this with success already, right? And who is using the solution, and what can this look like for me? So I think it's really great advice there, and definitely appreciate the insights there on kind of that evaluation and navigating the somewhat crowded market, we'll say, of WMS there as well. So now, additionally, from Deloitte's perspective, you mentioned a little bit in the smart factory side there, but you also have a smart warehouse experience too, I think, is my understanding. So tell us a little bit about the smart warehouse experience that Deloitte has created.
Well, we have the Smart Factory that's in
Hmm.
Wichita. That is actually, we bring customers or potential clients to walk through, and it's the innovative center where they
Hmm.
can actually see from end to end, from the manufacturing side, because we have a manufacturing line there, to what
Okay.
it looks like, and understand what their requirements are. But our biggest smart factory, we call it Smart Factory in Wichita, and
Hmm.
in Montreal, we have a smart factory, but it's a smart warehouse where that we actually have highly automated technology in there. We have auto store, we have a pack
Mm-hmm.
size in there, we have other technologies, we have an unloader, and the client can actually come and sit down, or potential client, and go through, this is where they are today and what does tomorrow look like. And we could take them through all these different use cases that we have built around technology, and how they integrate to either SAP, Manhattan, Blue Yonder, whatever your WMS may be or may not be. But our key um, focus is not only automation, but actually how all that data that we collect, because it is a working manufacturer in Wichita.
Mm-hmm.
It is, we do produce kits. We produce a rover kit that is for STEM that we actually ship
Mhm.
out to high schoolers, and
Oh
they can
wow.
actually
Okay.
build that robot. So we actually, so a lot of times people think, oh, it's just a showcase. It's not just a
Yeah.
showcase. It's actually where we actually build out these kits and we ship them out, and the students can actually. So it's actually us giving back to the community of how do
Mhm.
they actually can do, STEM and STEAM, either
Mhm.
one of those. How do we actually use that information to actually build my next generation of
Mm.
engineers.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that it's really working and producing something because I think a lot of times you hear about demo centers or innovation centers and things like that, which are very cool, but they're just kind of like on loops, just showing basically a demo, right? Like not
Mhm.
actually doing the real work, and I think that can make it certainly a difference to see like, well, how is this actually happening when something live is going on there. So you use the term smart there, both smart factory, smart warehouse. So I mean, how does Deloitte define like the idea of a smart factory or a smart warehouse? What does that actually mean?
Well, I won't say where Deloitte may find define that, because we
Mm,
know across industry, across supply chain, people talk about smart warehouse all the time. The
yeah.
smart warehouse, in the essence of how we're looking at it, is a highly automated and intelligent facility that
Mm,
actually leverages technologies like AGVs, ASRs, robotics that actually help optimize your warehouse operation. So, and that's really a smart warehouse, but not only
mm,
smart warehouse there, but how do you use all that data? We go back to machine learning, we go back to AI. How do you use all that data to collect and make decisions on, hey, connectivity? People now use 5G in their
mhm,
warehouses. How do they actually use that Bluetooth? Smart warehouse can be also coupled with your tablets. So
mm,
you're back in the day when there was no such thing as tablets in the warehouse. The tablets didn't even
yeah.
exist. Or
Yeah.
the mobile app. So we always had the standard RF devices that you use, but now you use your smartphone. You can scan it, you
Mm,
can get all the data. So if you think about smart warehouse and defining what that is, that's all those evolutions of technology that
mm,
you can use to make your end user smarter, but also smarter technology to actually make sure your customer, everything goes back to your customer. How do I
mm,
get my product to my customer efficiently, effectively, and on time using that smart technology?
mm. Got it. Yeah, yeah, and I think that it's very interesting to see those evolutions. Like even just the tablet you mentioned there, kind of gave me a flashback. I had gotten a job one time in my career, and they gave me an iPad as part of my laptop, iPad, cell phone, and they gave me the iPad, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I can use this on the floor to look at the WMS and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, no, like, you could just you could check your emails on it, and I'm like,
Right.
"What? I already have a laptop and a phone." Like, it just sat in my drawer, like, the whole time I worked there. I didn't do anything with it, but to hear that evolution and, what we can do and, from, not only a software perspective, but then from, like, the actual user experience and how do we deliver that onto different devices, I think has come such a long way. Super exciting to be able to give that user experience kind of that next level of treatment, which I think is such a great thing. So very interesting to dive into these different topics with you here, Wanda, and learn from you today and your depth of knowledge here. So you guys are going to be at ProMat this year as well. I think for the first time, I think is my understanding. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what people can expect from Deloitte at ProMat?
So let me make sure this is the first time that we're going to have a booth at ProMat.
Yes.
But
Okay.
Deloitte has always partnered with MHI, and we've
Hmm.
written the annual industry report. So for the last 12 years, we've been writing the report with MHI. So we've always spoke on the stage on that Wednesday to release of the report at ProMat. and we have a panel discussion. So this year, I would be I was 2 years ago too at Modex. This year, well,
Mhm.
it's 2025 now. I keep saying this, it is 2025.
Yeah, yeah.
But in March, I would be the moderator on the stage with the release of the new report. And then additionally, this year, as I said, we're going to have a booth. And our booth is in the supply chain building. But
Mhm,
also, we will actually have two sessions. We have one session on automate to accelerate. That's going to be on that Monday. If you go onto MHI ProMat site, you'll see that it'll be at 1:30, 45 minutes. Discuss this the session of how automation has accelerated over the years, but
mhm,
also understanding that it will be a panel discussion. And we have some great people that's going to be sitting on the panel to talk about that. Then the other one is Omnichannel 2.0. One of our partners, has a deep background in omnichannel. He actually used to be work for Manhattan and a lot of other places, but he
mhm.
has a very keen and another young lady who's going to be talking with him, talking about Omnichannel 2.0. And that would be on that Tuesday, March 18th, that we will be presenting that in the afternoon.
All right, awesome, and we definitely look forward to seeing you there at ProMat, and I think you guys will be joining us on our live stream additionally as well. So definitely excited for that, and really appreciate all the knowledge that you shared with us today on kind of the somewhat crowded and complex WMS side of the industry, and really appreciate you coming on and talking to me here. So if people want to get in touch or learn more about the supply chain side of Deloitte, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can actually contact me, Wanda Johnson. That's W Johnson at Deloitte.com. I'm actually on LinkedIn. You can actually find me on LinkedIn under Wanda Riddick Johnson. And I will, if I'm not the right person to talk to you about, I can talk to you about warehouse management systems and automation, but also on any other areas that I talked about at the beginning. If you have a need there in manufacturing or product engineering, just reach out to me and I will connect you with the right person.
All right, sounds great. And we'll definitely put all that information in the show notes here, as well as at the newwarehouse.com, so people can easily find them. And really appreciate you coming on and joining me today, Wanda. So thank you once again for your time.
And thank you, Kevin, and you have a wonderful day. I really greatly appreciate having this conversation.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, the New Warehouse Podcast. And I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel. And if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.